Hi, welcome to the Haven Writers Guild podcast.
We invite you to join us as we explore the curious world of writing. Alright, so I've been thinking about what you said about self-publishing in our last conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was reading an article through Facebook the other day where a woman called Rebecca Watts has written an article called The Cult of the Noble Amateur. And this is a quote from the article. She's talking about Instagram poets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've heard about the phenomena of Instagram poets, but it's something I've sort of been keeping an eye on. Anyway, this is the quote. Like the new president, she's talking about Donald Trump, the new poets are products of a cult of personality, which demands from its heroes only that they be honest and accessible, where honesty is defined as the constant expression of what one feels, and accessibility means the complete rejection of complexity, subtlety, eloquence, and the aspiration to do anything well. That's a pretty big statement.
It's quite damning, isn't it?
It's very damning, and the backlash against this article has been quite strong, to be honest. But she goes on, she's talking about Rupi Kaur, who has kind of taken Instagram by storm with her poetry, which is quite raw. And anyway, I read this article and I found myself getting really indignant because I have recently become an Instagram poet. I have been putting my poems up. I have been doing it anonymously because I like that I can.
Well, there's something very personal about poetry, isn't there?
There is, and I don't feel completely confident putting my real name to them because I like that I can just share the poems themselves without people looking me up on Facebook and seeing my profile and who I am and whatever. It's supposed to be just about the poetry. Anyway, I was thinking about it and I realised I'm self-publishing.
Realisation.
It was a bit of an epiphany because I have been so anti-self-publishing, as you well know. Yet somehow in my head I have separated self-publishing poetry to self-publishing books.
I mean, it's an ideal platform for poetry.
Exactly.
It's a nice snapshot picture of a digestible poem.
Yeah.
You can take into your day quite easily. But as you say, with the quality of what we were talking about last week with self-publishing, there is an awful lot of very bad poetry there.
There is, admittedly, yes. Well, like you said, I mean, readers are having to discern what's good poetry and what's not, and perhaps they're not as critical as they should be about poetry. I mean, poetry is more difficult to get published. You can go to a publisher with a fiction or non-fiction and have a chance of actually being published. As a poet, your chances are so much slimmer of actually having a book of poetry published. I mean,
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to be either already well known or be really lucky. So I love that Instagram's there because all of a sudden you've got all these people able to share their poetry, and it may not all be great quality, but you can share it and you can put your poems out there and there's no publisher getting in the way. So I feel like in a way I've kind of agreed with you without meaning to.
Yeah, because it wasn't always that way with poetry, was it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, historically, poets used to be celebrated. I mean, countries are proud of their William Wordsworths and Blake and the poets that changed the world and were really the voice of the nation. I mean,
they've got Robert Burns Day in Scotland.
Have they?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, yeah. I mean, we've lost that. I think we've lost, as a culture, we don't cherish poetry like we used to. And I love the fact that people are excited about poetry again. And I think that by actually sharing poetry on things like Instagram, it's actually making people more curious about poetry and what other poetry is out there and actually looking back to the classic poets and finding out more about them. And then by doing that, learning about form and structure and subtlety and the things that we have allegedly lost. I don't think that's the case. I think this is a rebirth of poetry.
So it's very exciting then.
It is exciting, and I think we have Instagram to thank for it. I think it is different for books because obviously you can't put a whole book on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's very interesting because I've almost found the opposite with novels.
Okay.
I think I've sort of found that because there's a lot of advertisement for novels on Instagram. There's a lot of authors self-publishing and publishing, I suppose, through publishing houses as well. And they put their book up on display. But I suppose I found it very kind of faceless and it's very easy to scroll past. Because I've really found that Instagram is just well, I suppose not just Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're actually using is just an image of a novel. No matter how good the cover is, it's very easy to scroll past as they sort of, they sort of merge into each other. No matter how good the artwork is, because some of them have got fantastic artwork and spend a lot of time creating this image, but it's just so easy to scroll past. I've found that in bookstores and libraries as well. I found it very difficult to pick a book out of a crowd of books because you go to a bookstore and you go to the science fiction section and it's like all the spines are the same, or if the covers are there, they're all sort of black and neon, and if you got the fantasy, it's all woods and groves and things like that. So they all kind of merge into each other. I found it's kind of difficult to market.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you on Instagram. I have seen publishers actually putting their new authors' books up as the latest thing, and I just scroll past because who can be bothered. But the thing is, I find that in bookstores you go in and yes, the covers are terribly cliched by genre, but if I see an interesting cover, the fact is I can pull it off the shelf and open it up and have a flick through and read a couple of lines or a couple of chapters if I've got that much time. And I think that's the difference. I mean, when you're advertising using social media, I think it is a danger getting lost among everything else. And I'll be honest, as an author, I'm probably considering self-publishing a lot more seriously now than I was before we started having this conversation.
That's good.
Well, it seems like it's actually, there's still something in me that just rubs me up the wrong way. But I can see that it's viable. But I'm scared because I don't want to just become another thing that people scroll past and never get, read.
So for you, it's specifically that online aspect, because I think we talked about it before this and you're sort of saying that you mainly thought that it was an online kind of thing.
Yeah, well, for me, self-publishing equals online and ebooks and
Kindles,
Amazon onto Kindle and that kind of thing. But I really don't know that much about turning self-publishing into hard copy books.
Yeah, maybe that's something we'll have to look into, because I've heard of a few authors. I mean, Matthew Riley, for instance, he apparently before he hit the big time, he was publishing his own books and he was selling them out of the boot of his car, sort of thing. So that's I think that's obviously an avenue. I suppose I like that whole aspect of it. That's what I like about the whole concept, is that you're creating everything from scratch. That whole kind of DIY is.
Well, you were saying, was it you that was telling me about what's his name, Christopher Paolini?
Yeah, so with Paolini, he wrote Eragon at a very young age. So he was sort of in his late teens. So by the early 20s, I think he'd published it. His parents set up a publishing company specifically to publish his book.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting. Because
maybe we should just see if our parents will do that for us.
Yeah. But I think there's something in the self-publishing that you can create individual books, so you can just pump out one book or as many books as you like, as opposed to, whenever you see the newspaper movies, you stop the press and you've wasted so many thousands of bits of page because of the whole electronic printing. You can print individual books, and I think that changed everything.
Yeah, well, I guess the other thing too is one of my lecturers was talking about this idea that the thing about books that's different from anything online is that a book is immortal, in a sense. Anything that goes online can be changed. It can be edited, it can be manipulated, it can always be changed. Whereas once it's in print, once it's on paper, that's it, that's all you've got.
Yeah, but I think the thing with hardback books, they may be immortal, but they quite happily are forgotten in dusty corners for centuries. And maybe waiting for people to pick them up, or maybe never to be seen, end up in the junk pile or library sales.
I love library sales. So are online books.
Yeah.
There's millions sitting there, and you might have one or two people come across them perhaps, but unless they're a media frenzy or you've got a massive following and people are waiting to buy it, you still get the same thing. You've just got a massive catalogue online of books that have never seen the light of day.
Yes, but with something online, it's not the same. There's not a whole bulk of books. I mean, it's electronic code, so you can kind of reduce it to one book if you wanted to, as opposed to, if you print 9,000 copies of a book, you've got 9,000 copies that are floating around the world forever used, whereas, electronic copy is exactly where you need it. I suppose in terms of you and I being authors who want to eventually get our novels out there, and you're thinking about publishing, I'm thinking about self-publishing, I suppose we're sort of thinking in terms of that, the actual marketing side of things, how to go about it. I suppose a while back you were talking about book trailers, which I thought was very interesting, because one of the things I was thinking about with, scanning Instagram and seeing those books is you don't get a sense of, it's not like a movie, with a movie you've got a clip and you basically get a sense of the movie straight away, you're there. Whereas a book, you see the front cover, you read the blurb, it's difficult to get a sense of the book straight away.
Yeah, well, book trailers are something I hadn't heard of at all until last year, and I love the idea of them, and I think we should actually investigate that a little bit more. But this idea of having a movie-like trailer for a book that gives you a really quick overview of what it's about, but in a visual way, is brilliant. And I think really what we need to do as writers and as authors is be different. That's really what it boils down to. We've got all these different ideas for plots and characters and the way we've actually brought the novel into being, but it can't stop there. When we go into the world of marketing and we're trying to be seen on social media, which is so saturated with everybody else that's trying to be seen, we have to come up with new ideas, because like you said, it's very easy to scroll past. So having things like a book trailer, or I don't even know what else, we'd have to see how people are doing this, but we need to come up with different ideas for marketing.
Yeah, what I love about book trailers is they kind of toe the line between because when an adaptation goes to screen, it instantly spoils the whole thing for some people. So creating a book trailer that doesn't spoil the experience for the reader is quite a tough ask, and there's some really bad ones out there. Just quite really cheesy and things like that. But I think it's a good avenue. Interesting avenue as well. So in terms of marketing, bringing it back to Paolini, who I'm pronouncing his name correctly, one of the things he did do was that he toured the country afterwards. So his parents set up a publishing company, they printed the books, but then he was actually physically out there doing the run around the country. Yeah,
well, I think as authors we need to be very... This comes back to this idea of being marketers and being salespeople, which is something that authors never had to do before, because publishers did it. Publishers organised the book tours, and publishers, did all the marketing and the media and the pushing of the book, whereas now it's something that's fallen onto the author's shoulders. And perhaps that isn't a bad thing, because...
I'm saying maybe it's not fallen, maybe it's the sort of... gives the author the opportunity to explore and understand all the ways of producing a novel. Yeah,
well, that's right. It is probably a good thing, because it gives us... Well, it means we know what we're doing, maybe, hopefully.
Well, yeah, if you've got an idea of what's going to happen in the end, you're not just driving the car, you've got to understand what's happening under the hood as well.
Oh, wow. That's a great metaphor.
It's a great metaphor,
yeah. All right, well... I'm very interested in this aspect of marketing.
I love to talk about marketing.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really? Are you actually serious?
Oh, yeah, very interested, because it's sort of coming up with fresh ideas, I think. It's a fresh approach to selling a novel, because then, authors should be writers and they should be able to write their own campaign.
All right, well, we'll certainly look into that, and I suppose if anyone is a self-publisher or has been published through a publishing house,
or have some fantastic fresh new ideas,
and has some ideas around marketing and has seen interesting new ways of doing that, then let's talk about it. Let's see what's out there.
Absolutely. Oh, great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Haven Writers Guild podcast today.
If you'd like more writing support, find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or on our website. Or you can email us directly at havenwritersguild@gmail.com.